Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. Dear friends, it starts as it should not start anymore already for a long time with an elderly man. So welcome to this conference. I have been chosen by my colleagues to open this conference, and so it's not my fault, but you should complain maybe elsewhere. So you can see this fact: an elderly man is welcoming to the conference about masculinity, M3. You can see this ironically, or it can be seen as a completely normal in a context like this, where it is clear that there are very many women involved in this project, hopefully not too few men, so that the quota is right. I personally learned about the quota when I worked in Sweden almost 20 years ago, and there, when planning cultural events, the men already insisted that there should be an appropriate number of women on every panel and in every jury and so on. They in turn had learned that from their women, and I learned it from them, in the sense that in the end, I didn't even ask about the quota anymore, but wherever this quota was violated in a large sense, I felt something is wrong here. That is, I think, a small but beautiful example of cultural learning. It changes the standards. And this conference is, as I understand the program, about standards. It asks precisely about the standard of what is masculinity, what is a man, as the initial question about what a real man would never do shows, for example. But this brings us to the field of culture and to the area of competence of the Max Müller-Bawan, the Goethe-Institut, because cultural variance of concepts of masculinity is immediately apparent. Even if one can speak from a very generalizing feminist perspective about something like a global male patriarchy, which then ranges from Sweden to the Taliban, it seems to me that the question of the different cultural imprints is particularly fruitful. In my case, this was the cultural shock when I came from Stockholm to Paris, France, where no man had the idea of wanting to measure the participants in a project according to a gender quota, but where, for example, in an elevator, after a lady had gotten off, men would who were complete strangers for each other, exchange comments about her physical appearance in a completely relaxed manner. A behavior that would be quite impossible in my German homeland. As you know, German is pretty much halfway between Sweden and France. So, culture. Masculinity is not only culture, but the cultures of masculinity are the topic through which one can probably best determine what that can be in the end, masculinity. Culture is the images, the intuitive, more or less explicit connotations of the masculine, which alone, once taken out of the shadow of the preconscious, can have an attentive and irritating, thus a learning effect. And I'm pleased with the many approaches across methods, disciplines, and genres that this conference dares to take in order to approach the phenomenon in this way. As the sociologist that I am, I must, of course, be particularly interested in the complex of questions surrounding masculinity and power. Power as the opportunity to impose one's will and the institutionalization of this imposing power as dominance is a famous definition of the great German sociologist Max Weber. It will also, I believe, underlie a reasonable analysis of patriarchy to which Max Weber, born in 1864, himself belonged. In his biography, with mental illness and bad neurotic relationship problems, offers a perfect example of the deformations and life contortions to which men of his generation and social rank were subjected, even though or perhaps even because they were holders of power and domination. Here's a picture of Max Weber, a picture of a man that I think tells a lot about this, if only in its darkness and sadness, and certainly as a contrast to the funny, colorful pictures from South Asia that form the corporate identity of this conference. For me, it also tells about, above all, something about what power and institution can do, even to the ones who hold it. In this respect, in my opinion, as a small hint for further fields of investigation, perhaps the analysis of the most masculine of all institutions would be a next step. Where is manliness and masculinity so essential, so systematically, brutally constructed, and so inhumanly enacted as in the military? And where, not to lose sight of the sad logic of the male domination, is it so much awful what is done to man by man as in the military? But I should not get lost in such reflections in this address of welcome. If I understand it correctly, our event serves to uncover precisely these inherent connections, man and masculinity, and the images and self-images associated with them are to be deconstructed and reconstructed in order to better understand our cultures at this central axis of society and living environment. This is a demanding task which the planners want to tackle with an exciting mix of formats and methods, in which, fortunately, I think the things will not always be as serious as the face of Germany's most famous sociologist announces. I wish you all strong and lasting impressions from this diverse explorations and encounters in this conference, as well as from the following initiatives of our Max Müller Bhavans and Goethe-Institutes in Chennai, Delhi, Kolkata, Pune, Mumbai, and Dhaka. My thanks go to all participants, the many speakers and protagonists, but especially to the great team of the participating Goethe-Institutes in India and Bangladesh, who, inspired and coordinated by our particularly dedicated colleague and director in Chennai, Katharina Görgen, have composed this exciting program. I wish you much pleasure, fruitful exchanges today and tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention. And it's my pleasure now to introduce you to the already mentioned Katharina Görgen with her welcome words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Franke, for opening our conference on masculinity. Dear conference audience, dear contributors, herzlich willkommen. Allow me to open with a personal confession. For years now, I have been part of that group exactly, which fought for more visibility for women. For every opening, every panel, and every event that was being planned, you could count on me asking, and where are the women? And it's not only women that I wanted to see more in these prestigious moments. I wanted more diversity in general, meaning more Black people, more Indigenous people, more people of color, and more gender diversity. Or looking at it the other way around, I wanted men as representatives for everything and anything to be replaced. Now I can only speak for myself here, but I'm pretty sure this is true for some of the other team members as well. This is the very first project I've worked on where once in a while we would look at each other anxiously and ask, do we actually have enough men? Because just like a conference on feminism with only male speakers, it's not a good idea. The same is true vice versa. But the very first finding of our male masculine project is that way more women than men are interested in this topic. But working with women only wasn't an option, since the project is about masculinities and about what being a man means today. What is expected and imagined to be masculine and what is not. Masculinities and therefore men are in the center of this project, whether they like it or not. Men not being too interested in joining a conversation about masculinities is not at all a South Asian phenomenon. After having realized that the museum as an institution is a masculine space, the German curator Michael Fehr wanted to develop this further and create a museum of men. After everyone else rejected the project, it was finally shown in the Women's Museum in Bonn. Why wouldn't men want to execute such a project? Is it really because they are so perfectly fine with the gender role assigned to them? Or have they perhaps, unlike many women, never had the chance to critically question the gender role they are performing and therefore shy away from the project? And what would be a good starting off point under these circumstances? We decided to kickstart the project by asking men on the street what the real men would never do. Quite a few of our esteemed speakers have criticized it for it, and rightly so. The sociologist R.B. Connell writes, and I quote in her book on masculinities, "Mass culture generally assumes there is a fixed, true masculinity beneath the ebb and flow of daily life. We hear of real men, natural men, and deep masculine." Assumes being the most important word here, since this famous inner core that makes us either men or women has not been found yet. Quite the opposite is actually true, and here I quote Connell again. The usual finding on intellect, temperament, and other personal traits is that there are no measurable differences at all. Then why did we choose such a traditional and obviously man-made concept of the real men to start this conversation and risk to reinforce it? The truth is that it was never really about the answers, even though I was quite surprised to find out that youngsters, without even thinking, answered that the real man would never leave his house without his mobile phone. Okay. It was always about revealing the fact that everyone we asked could immediately answer this question. If we like it or not, most of us still have these very stable, fixed ideas about what a man should do and what he shouldn't do. Every few years or so, an old advertisement done by actor Sanjay Dutt reappears on the internet. In it, the actor gives very precise descriptions on what a real Bharat ki Mard, a real Indian man, should be. No long hair, no girlish scooter driving, no purple shirts, and by all means, no creams and no lotions. While this might have made you laugh, it shows the restrictions many men around the world still comply to in order to be read as men by others, and therefore confirming an identity that was assigned to them. In a recent German book called The Patriarchy of Things, Rebecca Endler shows that the world we know today was not only shaped by men, but for men as well. Men were often understood as the norm when it came to medicine, measurement, and algorithms. They made themselves the norm and thereby reconfirmed their superiority over the other. This came to no surprise to our slightly feminist team and seemed to reconfirm our claim that men really need to change. But if the world is so ideal for men, how do we explain that so many more men than women decide to end their life? By ignoring the heterogeneity of masculinity, patriarchal norms might hurt men much more than it has ever occurred to us. In his project Boyish, Rajat Mittal writes, and I quote again, "Just as the feminist movement has long examined and established how patriarchal culture undermines the female gender, I strongly believe that the men and boys are reeling under their own understanding of patriarchy, one that is debilitating and preventing them to live a fulfilling life. And this is why we need to have this conversation. This is why we are here today." The topic of masculinity is huge and complex, and almost everything somehow relates to it. For this conference, we have chosen 4 main topics: masculinity and power, performing masculinity, masculinity and the media, and how to tackle the topic, speaking about masculinity with youngsters. These topics reflect our own work as a cultural institution, as well as our fields of interest. We agreed on these topics like we did everything in preparing this conference, as a team. For almost a year now, 6 institutes from Bangladesh and India have been working on man, male, masculine, and each and every team member deserves to be seen. So please meet our team. Everyone you saw in this video has been part of the planning of this conference. And if you want to, you can meet us during the Meet the Team break sessions. As you might know, the conference is only the first major step in our Masculinities project. Each city that is participating will follow up with a local project. Together with partners, we shift the focus to young adults and invite them to think about what masculinity means to them. We hope to continue this discussion with people of all gender, ages, backgrounds, and we really hope that you will continue to be part of this discussion too. So please feel free to contact us at any time with ideas, criticism, and/or praise. But for now, please enjoy the conference. And with this, I hand over to my colleague Gita Lakshman, who's going to introduce our spoken word artist.
Thank you. Good evening. It is my utmost pleasure to introduce this session on performing masculinity, where via the spoken word, we look to open the topic and reveal the theme. Words are singularly the most powerful force available to humanity. Are they merely a jumble of letters, a sound, series of sounds, and how do they carry meaning? Easily, as we all know, words have the ability in any language to help, to heal, to hurt, to hinder, to humble, and to humiliate. A vivid metaphor for words are bullets or seeds. This evening, our young poets intend to draw that bridge between that racy bullet and that nurturing seed. And by sharing their thoughts and their experiences with you, they look to move you to think, to react, or at the very least, sit up and listen. We begin with a difference. Contrary to the accepted norm of ladies first, Angshuman Sarma will be our first performer, followed by Anamika Joshi. Angshuman, bursting with ideas and his ideals, is well known for his hashtag 1000 Days of Poetry Instagram project, where he posts one poem a day. He will be performing Origami Masculinity in English. Anamika Joshi, known popularly as Berthold, whose brand Batho Ki Bakwas has garnered innumerable views, will be performing Who is a Man? This will be in Hindi with English subtitles. To know more about them or to watch their other performances, you can follow the links posted on our webpage, on our social media handles, as well as the social media handles of the poets. And plus, it will be there on the chat box here. But before that, sit back, relax, and watch what Angshuman and Anamika have to share with you this evening. Enjoy.
Origami masculinity. We are men, we do not cry. We are men. We play tough games like beating each other up and make fun of whoever cries. We are men, we write memes on each other's insecurities and then laugh. Later fight. We men are supposed to hold our head high and walk without caring for what we trample under our feet. You see, our boundaries are made up of muscles instead of empathy. We men are supposed to only give each other bro hugs, which last for less than 5 seconds because anything more is gay. Because the only way to state love for each other is when we are drunk. We men are not supposed to feel pain because मर्द को दर्द नहीं होता. If you feel it, you fold it like that love letter you wrote but did not send. Patriarchy. A red ink stain on a white shirt that is blood now. We wear it like the jersey of our favorite team without realizing how it is never the red from a menstruating woman and always the red from a fist. It is never the red from a pomegranate seed, fragile and soft, and always the red from a knife. It is never the red from a rose and always the red from a bullet. This society writes us a manuscript called patriarchy, and we follow it without asking a question because the moment you question it, its logic comes apart like the fascism of any government. It defines a man's worth by how many women he has fucked, how many schmucks he has struck, how big are his biceps, does he have a 50-60 inch chest, how loud is the language of his fist, and of course the size of his dick. I'm a man who grew up cheering for team patriarchy. I'm a man. My ego is the subject of every war, every research study, every story, the subject of our goddamn history. I'm a man, born into a privileged house, in a privileged caste with a privilege called penis. But we never talked about our privilege in our dinner table conversations. Instead, my mother would ask about my declining grades and my father would blame my mother as I couldn't tell both about getting bullied in school. All my words wouldn't leave my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth as my mouth manufactured a silence so big. I lived in it. Not even my sister, my secret keeper, heard a whisper. I thought that's what being strong was about. Maybe now I was man enough, like my father. I was raised by a calculator, not a father. Love was a formula he couldn't use. Hugs were a bracket he never had. Words were variables he couldn't solve. He hid his tears with his smiles, all tallied in his balance sheet of tuition fee and hospital bills and home loans. But he did not know how to calculate his love. I think he secretly wishes for someone to teach him how. Last time I left home, I told him his hugs were clockwork for his love. So he hugged me at the airport and I hugged him back with my 25 years of hunger. In our dinner table conversations, we don't talk about this type of hunger. You see how masculinity is origami, how it folds into a hug for love, always desired yet never received. I knew this the moment I claimed ownership of my wet pillow, of my snoot-filled handkerchief, of my puffy eyes. I told my inner child, who looks up to the adult me, that it's okay to let the sad flow out of my body. But the manuscript says that the only way for any emotion out is aggression. It doesn't matter if women have to carry the aftermath of a no on their bodies and their faces. That a scar is just collateral damage. We will always reduce women to an object for our pleasure. We will install the male gaze into our children's eyes with Barbies and Hot Wheels, that men will always be men, that even God is a man. The manuscript does not fold, produces paper cut edges, and over time our white shirt is heavy with enough red that we end up becoming a bloody clot. You see, our masculinity is origami. We can make anything out of it. I'm a man, I cry watching Swades free time. I'm a man, I play with bubbles. I'm a man, I write poems filled with my vulnerabilities. Today, I unfolded my origami masculinity and made a rose.
Namaste. I am Anamika Joshi, a spoken word artist based out of Jaipur, India. Today I present to you a spoken word piece based on man-male masculinity. In a language that many of you might not comprehend, Hindi. But let me just lay out the basis on which this poem has been written. I strongly believe that both the genders are united by fears. The fear of failure, the fear of loneliness, the fear of being judged, the fear of darkness. And these are the fears that unite us, make us human beings. So I request all of you to just follow the subtitles and try to grab the essence of the poem. The title of the poem is Who is a Man? जो अंदर चल रहा है वो बाहर दिखाना नहीं जानते, जो कहना चाहते हैं वो जताना नहीं जानते, मार लेते हैं ठहाके जोर से मगर जरूरत पड़ने पर आंसू बहाना नहीं जानते, घुट जाएंगे भीतर ही बिना आवाज किए, लाचार है ये अपने घाव दिखाना नहीं जानते, जो बंध गई बचपन में ही वो गांठें पुरानी सुलझाना नहीं जानते। पूछो कौन? देखा है मैंने उनको भी अंधेरे से डरते हुए, कहने से वो डरते हैं कि डर उनको भी लगता है। देखा है मैंने उनको भी लड़ते हुए सपनों से, मर्द हो तुम के जाल में फंसते हुए, धंसते हुए। उनका भी मन करता है कि खुल के बोले रोले वो, पर मर्द है ना, तो कैसे फिर अपनी कमजोरी तोले वो। आंसू उनके नमकीन से ही पर लगते हमको पानी है, गिर गए आंखों में कुछ, ये बात बड़ी बेईमानी है। आसान नहीं राहें उनकी, जाने क्या क्या सहते हैं, सब निर्भर है उनके ऊपर तो अक्सर चुप ही रहते हैं, एक ढांचा जिसमें ढलते हैं बना है वो कई शर्तों से, कोई पूछे उनको भी जाकर, रोए नहीं वो बरसों से। सिमट रही दुनिया उनकी, कोई खोले उनके राज कभी कि कैसे हिम्मत रखते हैं जब रूठती हैं खुशियां। बचपन से ही मर्द होने की पूरी लिस्ट पकड़ाई है, बातें नहीं वो दिल की बात, ये झूठी बात बताई है, रहे दूर जज्बातों से ये बहुत खूब समझाई है, जिम्मेदारी की जंजीर कसकर उन्हें पहनाई है। छटपटाते हैं वो भी, पर क्या तुमने कभी आवाज सुनी? तुम्हें क्या लगता है ये दुनिया उन्होंने खुद चुनी? अरे ढूंढते हैं वो पल जहां वो खुद बनकर रह पाते हो, जहां वो अपने दिल की बात हंसी में ना उड़ाते हो। चेहरे पे जाने कितने भाव आने से रह जाते हैं, अंदर तूफान घुमड़ता है, बाहर सब ठीक जताते हैं, करके आवाज ऊंची अपनी ताकत भी तो दिखानी है, जाने कौन सी कमजोरी उस शोर में अपने दबानी है। कौन कह गया उनको ये कि पैसों में बसती शान है, काबू में रखना औरों को इसी में उनका मान है। घुट रहे हैं कुछ तो यूं कि पता नहीं क्या करना है, सही किसको कहते हैं, जेंटलमैन कैसे बनना है। एक सुन्न सा कोना है अंदर, अपनी बात उसी में रखते हैं, जुड़े हुए हैं दुनिया से पर खुद से दूर ही रहते हैं। साथ, सहयोग, सहारा, ये सब हम उनसे चाहते हैं। अरे फर्ज है आखिर उनका ये बात उन्हें समझाते हैं। बड़े बड़े निर्णय सारे उनको ही तो लेना है, पर गलत नहीं हो सकते वो, सही भी उनको रहना है। एक दौड़ है जिसमें थककर भी वो घर आके मुस्काते हैं, तुम्हारी हर जरूरत का भार गिरते हुए भी उठाते हैं। पर मर्द की परिभाषा से जब थोड़ा भी बाहर जाते हैं तो जाने क्यों कदम उनके लड़खड़ा से जाते हैं। अपनी अहमियत को वो तुम्हारी नजरों में देखना चाहते हैं। जब तक तुम ना बोलो कि मर्द है वो खुद को खुलकर नहीं अपनाते हैं। बेड़ियां उनके लिए भी है, पर हम सब ने उसे छुपाया है। मर्द होने के गुण गिनाकर अवगुणों को दबाया है। अब ये फैसला है हम सबके हाथ कि मर्द की क्या निशानी है। कमजोरी भी उसकी ताकत है, ये बात उसे समझानी है। खुलकर रोने की आजादी से पहचान उसकी करानी है। घर के अंदर भी उसकी दुनिया है, ये जहन में उसके बिठानी है। हम सबके अंदर के डर एक ही हैं, एक ही हमारी कहानी है। कोई ढांचा नहीं है अलग अलग। ये सच्चाई हमें अपनानी है, ये सच्चाई हमें अपनानी है।
Thank you, Anamika and Angshuman. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust those riveting performances have provided you food for thought as we slip into a short networking break. There are 3 options available for you, and you can click the link and join the corresponding rooms. Room 1 features Meet the Poets, which allows you to interact with the poets and share any feedback that you may have. If you would like to know the faces behind the project, then Room 2 awaits you with Meet the Team. However, if you're just in the mood for some coffee, some small talk, then coffee and good company awaits you there. We thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you all in our upcoming sessions. You can choose from the options displayed on your screen, and do remember to get back in time for the exciting lineup scheduled for you this evening. Up next is Masculinity and Power, which begins at 5:15. One small note on the links. You will find the links in the chat box. You will need to copy and paste them in your browser. In the event you cannot view the links in the chat box, then please refer to the mails that you have received and click the corresponding links. Meanwhile, we look forward to see you and interact with you in one of our networking rooms.